antique radios,
River McGee and Molly,
phonographs, vintage TVs,
Lone Ranger,
transistor radios. The annual Puget Sound Antique Radio Association Vintage Electronics Swap Meet has it all and much more. Sunday, August 20th, 9 to 2, Shoreline Community College. Go to PugetSoundAntiqueRadio.com for more information.
Hey, this is Paul Pearson. I've hosted the R&B show Star Time since the very beginning of Rainier Avenue Radio, and after years of featuring tracks from the 50s through the 80s, Star Time now plays R&B and hip-hop from the 1990s as well. A whole half-century of soul, funk, hip-hop, and more on Star Time, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Rainier Avenue Radio presents All Music, All Day Saturday. Music, all day Saturday.
This is Edwin Bailey, Bulldog Blue.
Jazz from the Cabinets.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Star Time.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson. This is Star Time.
Saturdays, all music, all day. Reggae Hour. K-Fox Night.
You looking for the perfect beat? Yeah, it's the beat of the box.
Fresh Juice. D-Money in the group.
Myself to the money. Nice Patron.
Taylor Hart.
This is Cynthia. The Northwest Rap Gang.
DJ Medina. Chad Cheddar. Northwest Rat Gang.
Sergio Lacour's Love Line.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell them who we talking.
Sea Monster Radio. Mo Jam. It's your jam.
We're live. Welcome to Mojo Mondays. This is KZ Music Media. Caller Goddess for Mojo Mondays.
Just my opinion. God is inspiration. Music. All day and all night. Saturdays. RainierAvenueRadio.org.
Do you have an idea for a community project in your neighborhood? You could be eligible for up to $50,000 in funding through the City of Seattle's Neighborhood Matching Fund. Grants are awarded to grassroots projects that build stronger communities, with an emphasis on projects led by impacting Black, Indigenous, and people of color BIPOC communities. Learn more about the Neighborhood Matching Fund or to see if your project meets the criteria, visit seattle.gov/neighborhoods/NMF.
Would you like to see when your favorite Rainier Avenue Radio show comes on? Check out our show schedule, updated weekly at RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello. Is everybody there today?
Hi.
Yes, hi. How are you? Hello,
Good.
TV Lounge. Ms. Violeta, Strash, and Tina Lombard here at your service. And welcome to another episode of Real Estate and Money.
That's right. Got some important information for you to hear today. Sorry. And then we have some sad news about things happening as far as our climate is concerned. But we've got tips on how you can overcome a lot of these issues. So let's get started with our show.
Yes. So once again, stick around. We're going to be talking about climate change, how it affects you, how it affects your buying decisions, and how the overall U.S. is competing with this climate change and the housing market.
Yes. Okay. So I'll go ahead and start with our inventory counts for the week. We are looking at King County. First of all, we have 407 homes that went active and listed last week. 259 homes went pending and 350 homes sold, an average price of $1,198,000 compared to last year, which was an average of $1,107,000. An 8%, about 8% difference there. Then for days on the market for July in King County, last year we had 12 days versus this year 26 days. So 2 weeks difference on having your home listed for a couple weeks difference. Percent of the list price was 107%. So people were paying 7% more for homes last year versus this year, which was just pretty flat, 100%. Sellers are getting what they are asking for, basically. And then showings per listing, 16 showings versus 7 showings this year. So down a little bit, 9 days, or I'm sorry, 9 showings. That's a little bit less than what we saw last year. People are jumping to get these homes that are popping up. So you see a lot of pending inventory out there. As soon as the homes are listed, people are running out there and snapping them up. And then showings to get to pending, sellers were looking at 24 showings last year versus 19 showings, or down 5 showings this year. Now in Pierce County, we are looking at 228 homes that went active last week. 116 went pending, 180 sold at an average price of $611,000 versus $595,000 last year. So up a little bit, about 3%. And then we're looking at days on the market for July in Pierce County, 14 days. Last year, 31 days, or again, a little over 2 weeks days on the market this year. I know it does make sense, days on the market versus how many showings per listing. It just depends on the area, the price point, and what else? Just the different amenities that are available in that community. And then percent of the list price last year in Pierce County, it was 103.5%. And again, it's flat this year. Showings per listing, 10 showings last July. This July, we're looking at 6. And then showings to get to pending, sellers, 15 showings last year, and about the same, 14 this year. Now in Snohomish County, we have 149 homes that are active. 121 homes went pending. 161 homes were sold an average price of $779,000. And last year, same time, 805. So just, it's pretty even, I would say, about 4%. And then in Snohomish County, days on the market for July in Snohomish County, let's see here. Okay, 11 days versus 21 days this year. And then percent of the list price, 105 last year. And again, pretty even, 100% right now. Showings per listing, 13 showings per listing last July, 7 this year. And then showings to get to pending, 19 showings versus 16 this July. So there you have it. Those are our numbers for the week. And Tina, take it away with our mortgage minute.
Yes, some exciting stuff going on. Okay, thank you, Bea. Yes, the mortgage market. What is going on now? Well, the average rate right now for a 30-year fixed mortgage around the U.S. is 7.004 with an APR of 7.089. So that's still a very good rate. I mean, we were looking at numbers at 7.8, 7.5 about a month ago. So now the 7.000, I can wrap my hands around that. So the 20-year fixed rate right there, you've got 7.1. A 15-year rate is at 6.211 national average. Let's go down to a 5-year ARM, 7.154. So you see the 5-year ARM actually is more expensive than the 30-year. Let me see. Let's look at a 7-year ARM. 7-year ARM, 7.548 on a national average. That actually is higher than a 30-year. So why would you do that? The FHA loan for a 30-year fixed is an average of 6.40. So that's still very competitive with the 30-year fixed conventional, which is at 7.004. The 30-year fixed VA rate is at 6.316. So some of my observations here, you'll see that the FHA and the VA loans, of course, if you qualify for VA, they are much better than conventional. Conventional at 7.004 sounds good. I mean, it's lower than it has been in the last couple of weeks. But right now, even with FHA, in some cases, even with the FHA having MI, they are still, the payment with an FHA loan plus the MI is sometimes lower than a conventional loan. So there is no difference between conventional and FHA when it comes to most factors. If you go FHA, it doesn't mean that you're less than or so on and so forth. It's just a government-backed loan. So if you're out there in the market and you don't have a lot of money to put down, FHA by a lot of means is a better fit for you, perhaps, if you want to put a little bit of money down and not have to worry about MI, so on and so forth. So let's keep going down just a little bit more here. You can see here, as of August 15th, the 5-year ARM was at 7.85. So, of course, nobody's trying to get you into a 5-year ARM. The 30-year fixed, 7.89 APR national average. And as you can see, the graphs are kind of going all over the place. The 30-year seems to be coming down, and the 15-year seems to be going up just a little bit. Still, overall, I get people who are asking me, what are the rates? And I just tell people, higher than before. But right now, even though the rates are high, there is still a lot of shopping out there. We're finding sellers are not having 25 people knocking on their door and asking them to buy their house. Now they may have 2 or 3. So in my experience in the last month or so, usually there's 1 or 2 other offers on the table as opposed to 15. So even though the interest rates are higher, you could probably get a house at a discount or at a better price. Most definitely you would get a better price than if the rates are at 2, 3, or 4%, because there'll be a lot of people out there competing in the market. So right now, the rates aren't doing anything exciting. They're still right around the 7s. Don't let that stop you. Go ahead and get your house and then refinance in the next couple of years when the interest rates go down, if and when they go down. So thank you, Daniel. That's all I got for mortgage rates.
Yeah.
So V, do you get a lot of people out there still asking for mortgage rates?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, always. What types of programs are there is what they're asking for. There's still first-time home buyers, people that need to downsize. There's people out there that need homes. So now is still a good time. We're coming down off the summer market pretty soon, and kids are going back to school, but there are still people motivated to get into the right school district, to get into the right area, and be closer to all their needs and all the amenities that they're looking for. So.
Right. And it's nice, sometimes when it comes to the Christmas time, the end of the year where taxes, you got the tax cut off. A lot of times sellers are like, hey, I just need to dump this house before December 31st. So a lot of times things get exciting and they heat up a little bit around October. A lot of times lenders kind of cool off on rates because they want to get as much people as they can before the end of the year. So October is not a bad time to buy houses. You would close before Thanksgiving or before Christmas.
That's the other time too. Yeah, before the holidays, people want to move into their new home before the holidays.
Yes. And I don't want to discourage anybody, but I get a lot of first-time home buyers, and they always say, "I'm a first-time home buyer." I'm like, "Okay." They're like, "Do you have any first-time home buyer loans?" I'm like, "Well, every loan is a first-time home buyer loan, And there's a myth. I don't know where it's perpetrated by, but there's a myth that if you're a first-time home buyer, you got a half a point lower. There's no down payment. There's no closing costs, and you just get the bee's knees as far as loans are concerned. Okay, first-time home buyer means this is the first time you bought a home. In the last 3 years, you haven't owned a home or what have you. But it doesn't give you the rights to have poor credit. It doesn't give you money. It doesn't give you a lower rate necessarily. There are some programs like Home Ready or Home Possible. They give you a lower mortgage insurance payment, and they've got some other bells and whistles. But overall, if you're a first-time home buyer, that doesn't mean you get all these imaginary things that a lot of people try to tell you about.
What about the down payment assistance?
There's down payment assistance, but it is down payment assistance. So the key is assistance. Like V, when you want to go to college or something, and your parents, you're like, "Hey, parents, will you pay for everything?" They're like, "Well, I'll assist you, but I'll assist you, but I'm not going to pay for everything." Same thing with down payment assistance. You still have to have $1,000 to $3,000, sometimes $5,000 in your pocket. You have to pay for the appraisal up front. You have to pay for the inspection. And there's other expenses perhaps. But V, I got so many people sometimes they come to me. They're like, "I'm a first-time home buyer." I'm like, "How much do you have in your bank?" They're like, $800. I'm like, "Well, really? How much do you make?" And they're like, "No, I really have just $800. I'm like, "Well, the appraisal is going to cost $750. Then you have $150 between the 30 days you're waiting to do your loan." "Well, don't I have down payment assistance? I'm a first-time home buyer." I'm like, so if you're a first-time home buyer, you still have to go through the rigors of qualifying. But if you have family members and you have friends who bought a house 15, 20, 30 years ago, the rules that they went through don't apply now, especially with all the different changes that have gone into the market, especially after COVID. Yes. So one
assistance doesn't mean it's free. You do have to pay it back.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. I get people. Oh, isn't there a zero down program? I'm like, who in God's green heaven is doing a zero down program? My God, you got to put your foot in it. I mean, you got to put something into it. Nobody's just going to give you money. Great, you got a high score. But people with 5 houses have a high score. Your high score is not going to get you anything. But I get so many people. Don't you have a zero down program? Don't you have a zero down program? I'm like, you need to put money in, because if you don't have any skin in the game, you are not a good risk. So I tell people, this is not a hand me out. You still need to qualify for a loan. You still need to make the payments. You still need to do everything on time and sustain your credit. It's not a freebie handout. We want you to move here. We're going to give you money to do it. So my first-time home buyers, please do not go in there with an imaginary conception of it's zero down and everybody's going to roll the red carpet. There are still rigors that you need to qualify. And you will appreciate it when you're a second and third-time home buyer. You will appreciate what you had to go through to get your first house. And then you'll understand. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyways, so what are we talking about today, V?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things happening out there in the world. Climate is one of them, ever changing. And we have a number of different issues in various parts of the countries that just actually affects the way people perceive real estate, where they want to go to avoid serious climate issues in their current place. Mm-hmm. And so we want to talk about where those places are, what is happening as far as climate, mm-hmm. and tips on what to do if these things are affecting where you are right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you see? What do you see, Tina? What's happening with the climate and what?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it a little bit. Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. As of 10 years ago or 5 years ago, people talked about climate change and everybody thought they were nuts. But we're going to show you some clips here. But the degrees of the United States and around the world has been raising ever so slightly, 1%, 1.5 degrees a year or something like that. So it is going out. And if you understand, like California, they've had all the wildfires. They've had all these earthquakes.
Yeah.
You've had all this precipitation in parts of the country that never had rain before. Even here in Colorado, it's rained almost every day since April, which is absurd. Seattle's experiencing a lot of heat.
Right.
There are places around the world. I mean, and even Florida, there's a lot of hurricanes that are going on, and they're coming more frequently and more with more intensity. So what does that do to the housing market? What does that do to you? Did we cause this? Maybe we did. Indicators show that maybe the way that we use our gas and so on and so forth did affect the atmosphere. So we're going to talk to you about today. We're going to talk about what climate change is, how it's really affecting the country, and how it's really affecting your market. So I've got just 3 screens really quick I'll go through. But the first one here, which one do you got there, Daniel? I sent you. But it talks about climate change, and it shows you different parts of the country. So it's a CBS News one here. Daniel, do you got that? Okay, here we go. Now, on the left, thank you, Daniel. On the left, you'll see the difference between 1901 to 1930 compared to the differences or the averages between 1991 and 2020. Now, of course, the deep red shows that there is a degree change of 4 degrees per year in these regions. So if you look at the East Coast, at the top range there, you'll see that they're experiencing a lot of heat. And if you look in California, you see a lot of heat change in Southern California, parts of New Mexico, going on down to Texas. And even in the Panhandle there, you see a lot of these temperatures have risen. Now, the difference between 1981 and 2010, and 1991 and 2020, you'll see there are still some degree changes. It's still going a little hotter. And you see it's really hurting like Texas and New Mexico, parts of California, Florida. So this is something that is very vivid and is calculated. And then can you show the next screen, Daniel, really quick here? Mm-hmm. Let's see, look at all these different maps of the climate changes in the different regions as to compare it to a century ago. So there is active evidence that this is actually changing. It's changing our temperature, and it's changing on whether we need air conditioning, whether floods are going to occur, whether there's snow melt, whether there's earthquakes or disturbances in the atmosphere and precipitation and heat and wildfires. So do you have another screen there, Daniel? Yeah, here we go. I really like the screen here. It talks about America after the climate change. And let me look at that one really quick. What is so interesting about this? It shows that in Florida, the green, that's where a lot of hurricanes have developed. And there's much more hurricanes in these areas. And if you look in the red here, that's where a lot of wildfires are occurring, much so than any other time in history. So you see the difference there. These are now how this affects us is different. A lot of times, let me look at this really quick. If you look at the yellow here, the yellow are the wildfires. Excuse me, the yellow are the wildfires. The red are the earthquakes. Okay. And let me see here. And the floods are the kind of like the green gray. You've got the floods. You've got floods going in areas that we've never experienced before, or it's more intensified. Also, the hurricanes are going off the charts here. And you see that in California and up to Washington State, earthquakes are happening much more so than ever. And these are all the results of climate change. So, and you keep this up really quick, Daniel. Let's talk about this really quick. What they're finding out is people in Florida, there's so many hurricanes, there's flooding, there's all types of different weather-related catastrophes that are happening there. So what's happening to the market? A lot of people say, yeah, I love living in Florida. You know, that it's cheap. Well, there's a reason why it's cheap, because they're rebuilding, things are tearing down, they're rebuilding, things are tearing down. Also, to get insurance to cover your house in these places are very expensive. Some companies have just pulled out of Florida and they're not going to insure houses in Florida. Now, if you have a house that's on the water, that's beautiful, that's worth $1.5 million, and you have no insurance, how much is that house worth? It's not worth as much as a house that has full insurance at $1.5 million. So that's affecting people. Now, if you go to California, you see all the earthquakes and stuff, and the heat that's going on in California. You've got so much heat there in Arizona and Texas. A lot of people are saying, I can't deal with this, because if there's no air conditioning, there is risk of death. So a lot of people are moving from California and they're moving to places like Denver or Colorado or inland. They're like, we're not dealing with this anymore. We're not dealing with the wildfires and the earthquakes. We're out of here. We want to be safe. And that's also a concern up in Washington. You know, we're still waiting for the big one in Washington, still waiting for the big one, you know, and all those high rises in Seattle, they're earthquake proofed in concern of the big one. But a lot of people are saying, hey, I want to go inland. I don't want to be there if the tsunamis start hitting the coast. You remember they have all the tsunami signs there in Puyallup and, you know, in Auburn. And, right. You know, how is a tsunami going to come in you know, inside this far into inland? But there is a risk there. I remember I went out and bought a Jeep when I found out all those tsunami signs were going up in Kent and in Auburn. I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to buy a Jeep. So it affects me. So people now are buying inland. They're buying away from places that are secluded. They're buying away from places where there's wildfires. I mean, I was going to buy a house up in Evergreen, Colorado, and it's up in the mountains. And somebody told me, hey, you know, you can't get hazard insurance. Nobody's going to, you know, the fire incidents out there has a lot of risk associated with it. So you're not going to get fire insurance on your house. I'm like, well, forget that. So I moved. So I bought down here where, you know, we didn't have much of a risk. There are parts of the United States where there's a lot of hail damage. I think northern Texas is the #1 for hail damage, and Colorado is actually #2. So there are places on the foothills of Colorado where the mountains reach the inland where there's hail constantly. And so it's very hard for them to
your place. You even talked about hail coming down and denting your car.
Oh, yeah. No, they're the size of baseballs. They're like the size like this. So last week, I think it was Thursday night, I had hail outside. Thursday night. That was like this big. Okay, outside, right here, outside my house. So, you know, when I got my solar panels and stuff, that really wasn't a concern when I got it like 3 or 4 years ago. But now because of climate change, things are changing. So the way that we buy houses, a lot of people are buying houses that are flood proof or the resistance to flood. People are buying houses that have air conditioning in it. So I lived in 2 or 3 houses in Seattle that I owned that had no air conditioning. And there were houses in Seattle, we'd never had a sprinkling system. And here in Colorado, everybody has a sprinkling system because we know there's going to be sun. And every house has got an air conditioner. Well, now it's getting to be the case in Seattle.
Right.
You're experiencing such heat waves. And, you know, who's going to be out there watering your plants, you know? So all this is affecting the way we change the way we buy houses and how we think about the safety of our houses. So that's kind of what I know. What do you got, V?
And improvements, like you're talking about the sprinkler system and air conditioning in the home. A lot of people didn't have that years ago. Air conditioning was not the thing. And now you use that air conditioning unit more than 1 or 2 times a year. So, there are places like Arizona, 100 when you get into the 120s. What you going to live in the pool, or, you know, you got to have that air conditioning working nonstop, you know?
Yes. I mean, and it's something like, you know, there are places where classically, like Hawaii, you know, who experienced the wildfires. There are places that are not set up for this type of catastrophes. I'm not saying it's all due to climate change, but these are things that people are thinking right now. You know, we had one of the biggest fires in U.S. history here in towards downtown Denver. It was the Marshall Fires. That just several years ago, and that was in an area that was heavily occupied. It was right there by Boulder, and all these houses burned down, and everybody was in shock because how could this many houses in a suburban area be affected by a wildfire? And that's not something that we were concerned about. And years ago, and California, you had Oakland, you had parts of Southern California where the wildfires were just insane. Santa Barbara, they were just going on and on and on and on. And this is not something they were used to before. But once something does catch on fire because of the climate change, because the weather is hotter, these wildfires are out of control. Nobody's preparing for that. They're just out of control. So when you buy a house, people are like, I'm not living where there's a possibility of a wildfire. I'm not living out there up in the mountains where it's all isolated. I'm not having that. People are starting to figure this out. In Florida, I'm not living by the coast because if it floods, I'm gone. Nobody's not even insuring us over there. There's hurricanes right here at this point in Florida. Every year, I'm not going to buy my house there. So this is what I have. So this is why climate change is actually affecting all of us. They say, I just saw a report right now. It says that 1 in every 10 homes will be affected by climate change disasters. And this was in 2021.
Yeah, here in Washington, we had also that big, the erosion of that community. Everybody's saying earthquakes. No, not moving to Seattle. No.
Yeah.
And now we smell smoke from California, from Canada, wafting through the area. It's
insane. Yeah, we had ash falling here in Colorado from the fires in Montana a couple of years ago. Couldn't see the sun.
Yeah.
So this really affected everybody's health too.
Then you think about, 20 to 30% higher insurance costs for these high risk areas as opposed to low risk areas, and systems that you got to put into your home to prevent fires and anything that would jar your system. You need to be aware of the damage that can happen to your home.
Because people talk about, hey, I don't want to live in a crime infested area because I might get robbed. But what's worse, that's bad, but also it's bad when you live in an area where you're in threat of wildfires or flooding because it'll destroy everything. And now here's the thing, as far as insurance is concerned, one giant catastrophe like what happened in Florida and Texas several years ago, with all the flooding in Houston, that can really put insurance companies under. Okay. And what happens right now, we don't have enough inventory. Everybody's screaming, we don't have enough inventory. There's not enough builders out there. When there's these catastrophes that take up 4 or 5 states, all the builders and the carpenters, they all go, and the contractors, they go down there for repair. So while they're repairing, there's nobody building homes. Okay. And so if you have a giant catastrophe and everybody's insured by, State Farm or what have you, and, all this money goes into that, guess what? It affects the other people and the other side of the country. It affects their premiums because they need to recoup that money. Let me see, property over evaluation and flood risk. So here, look at this. Look at this really quick. You've got the bubble trouble. Climate change is creating a huge and growing U.S. real estate bubble. A catastrophe. So we're kind of waiting for that. So I don't want to scare anybody here, but a lot of these areas, because of flooding, like in Florida, because of earthquakes in California and Washington State, a lot of these houses, if something should happen, your $2 million home is going to be worth $550,000. Okay, so we really have to protect ourselves. Some states, such as Florida and some parts of California, insurance companies are like, we're out. Now, what happens, though, when you do a loan with somebody like me, a lenders say you have to have a homeowner coverage. You have to have hazard on your house. You have to have insurance. So what happens when insurance companies pull out of certain states? And they're like, we're not going to insure anybody here. We're not going to give anybody any homeowners insurance. Are the lenders going to lend there? No. There, especially if it's an area where there's no catastrophes that year on, in and out, there's always catastrophes. Insurance companies are like, listen, we insure people there, but when these disasters happen, it'll make us go bankrupt. We cannot afford to pay out on all these claims. So climate change is really affecting a lot of people because if you're in an environment where there's wildfires or there's risk of hail, or there's risk of anything, earthquakes, and you cannot get insurance, but guess what? You can't buy there. And so for the existing person who has a house there and they've owned it for 3 generations, the value of their house is no longer $1.2 million. It may be worth $300,000 if nobody can get financing and nobody can buy in that area. So anyways, I guess we're out of time. We're out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time. Big Day of Play is this Saturday in the Rainier Valley. Come on out August 19th and enjoy the festivities starting at noon.
Yes,
So I'm
great.
Violeta Strash, and now I'm with Coldwell Banker Dance.
Woohoo! Yes, congratulations. Okay, great. And I'm Tina Lombard with Bank of England Mortgage.
See you next Tuesday at 2:30. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.